You already know what time it is, man. You know we keep it untouchably raw over here. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah, we dealing with some ancient wisdom today. You know the general is super supreme on the planet in dealing with the ancient science. And I don't know why people don't understand that. They play, but man, I've been a priest of this knowledge, man, now for over 30 years, over 35 years. Been a priest. That mean that's all I done did, sleep, eat, and drink, you know, ancient scrolls, ancient history, and all in the whole 9 yards. You feel what I'm saying? And so today we talking about why ancient Egypt is untouchable by any ancient or modern civilization. You see what I'm saying? Ancient or modern. Now, the thing is, when we start talking about civilization, got to be clear about something. That, you know, technically civilization start with literature. You understand what I'm saying? This level of civilization start with literature. You got to have an alphabet. You got to have numbers. You see, because when you start dealing with Egypt, you see, you dealing with stone. You know, that's another, just an exquisite and unique trait of ancient Egypt was the mastering of stone structures and monuments. Megalithic now. We're not talking about no little pebbles and no, we talking about megalithic structures in stone. You know, and so where you may go to some nations and you might find a megalithic structure. You might find a megalithic structure. Only in Egypt where you can find thousands of megalithic structures. Only in Egypt. We got to be clear about that. And then you got some megalithic structures where, you know, it's rudimentary, meaning that the stone is uncarved, or, you know, it hasn't been cured. You know what I'm saying? It hasn't been cut, you know, it hasn't been cut. It, you know, based on geometry, you see. So some people take rudimentary stone. They large now. They still megalith, and they pile them on top of one another. Some make a structure, you know, using that method, but they don't have thousands of structures. They may have one structure. Like it's one structure. That's all it is. It's one structure. And so on and so forth. Only in Egypt where you have thousands and thousands of structures that have been, you know, this is Masonic. You see, Black Power. This is Masonic, meaning that they use geometry, they use the ruler, they use the square, you know, and then you got to understand you cutting out of, you know, you need miners, you know what I'm saying? People that go off into the mountains and cut that stone up out of there. You feel Black Power, we in the house, we dealing the science. Now, this is very critical where I have to explain this, which separate ancient Egypt from any other civilization, especially in the ancient world. Now, dealing with literature, because in order to build pyramids and build the kind of temples you see in ancient Egypt, you need mathematics. You see, in mathematics require paper. You got to have papyrus. You see what I'm saying? It's no different than an architect of the day. That's why when you see architects and they out in the, you know, they out in the field, say for instance, the architect is at the very site, the building site. A lot of times, even in modern time, they had a hard hat on and they had a scroll They still hold a scroll today. It really hasn't evolved no further than when the ancient African architects of Egypt was constructing the pyramids. It's on papyrus. It's in the scroll, and so they'll come out on the work site and they'll open up it's a scroll. It may not be papyrus. Yeah, it very well may be the modern paper today, but papyrus was the first paper. It was the first paper per se. And so, they come out and you have to do the mathematics long before you go. That's just like with any structure today. You know what I'm saying? So, to reach the level of ancient Egypt, now if you got a stone, if you just moving stones that you don't have to carve, and some, I'm gonna stay on my data. You see, some of them stones have never been, cut. They just take a large stone and they slap it on top of each other. But with ancient Egypt, they had them like, it's almost like, what is it called? Sandpaper, but not saying because it's smooth, where they have to smooth that stone out. So it's a process. They don't just they cut the stone, they measure that stone, and then they make sure they take something that's obviously to smooth it out. It's not sandpaper, but it's along the line of that to smooth them stones out. So when you go to them stones, they smooth. You feel what I'm saying? And so that's a process. But we're going to deal with this literature, and people need to know that. And I made sure I tighten Black Power. I made sure I tighten my chronology up. Now listen to this now. Listen to this. We're going to talk about literacy. We're talking about literacy. And when we talk about literacy, we talking about the first people on the planet that created books. That's what, yeah. We'll talk. I bet you I am, and I bet you don't know what the hell you talking about. I bet you ain't. I bet you a Neanderthal, okay, or air, one of the two. But if you want a box, I most definitely beat you up. It's not a problem. You know what I'm saying? Because I went to the land and they told me different. You feel what I'm saying? Now you go to the land and see what they say you are. You feel me? They even in the land, they amazed at my teaching. I'm a universal scholar, so you got to find somewhere. Yeah, you got to find you got to find a hole to crawl back up in. You can't even come up off the internet. You just a figment of somebody's imagination. You can't even come out of the motherfucking chat. Yeah, they didn't already hit you. They didn't already hit you. Somebody came and chopped you off. Yeah, they didn't already hit you. Good. Nah, because see, when you get to hitting on, when you get to calling a demon by his name, they get to acting crazy. So let's deal with this. Now we're gonna do a couple of videos. So if we don't finish on this video, come right back and we're gonna finish. Now, when we're dealing with literacy, we're dealing with literature. And just like Walter Williams stated, and it hurt a lot of people's feelings. You know what I'm saying? Because they caught up into the Greek, and they caught up into all of that. The Hebrew, they caught up into the Arabic. They caught up into believing that somehow these are really ancient people. And with no physical evidence whatsoever. With absolutely no physical evidence. Now, when we talk about the Greeks, you got all these so-called scholars. You got Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. You got Homer. Homer is supposedly who wrote the oldest literature in the Western world. This is what they tell you. Homer wrote the two books, the Iliad and the Odyssey. You see what I'm saying? Nah. They say Homer wrote these two books. Listen to me. I'm going to show you how these peoples is playing with the minds of the world. Now, you can easily look this up. At any given time you need to do this, go right here because I want anybody out there to refute me. Now, listen to this. Homer supposedly lived around 750 AD, somewhere in there. He lived, and they don't even really know. They guesstimating how long Homer lived, but they say he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey around 750 BC. Now, I looked up the oldest Iliad and Odyssey to date, the oldest one. Do you know the oldest Iliad and Odyssey is in the 10th century AD? Do you realize that? They don't have no Iliad. And so, do you know how long that's almost 1,300 years. That's almost 1,300 years, almost a millennium and a half, a gap between when Homer was supposedly on the planet and the oldest. Now, what's crazy, I don't even know if that 10th century is a complete Iliad or Odyssey. It might be a fragment. So it might not even be the complete. So I'm just showing you the gaps in between when they say the writer wrote this book and the oldest one still in existence. See, ain't no way you gonna be able to remember what the fuck Homer said when there's a 1,300 year gap in between when Homer supposedly wrote that book. You understand what I'm saying? And the oldest Iliad and Odyssey. It's no way possible. I don't even want to hear about it. If you that goddamn dumb to believe that somehow, and like I said, the one in the 10th century is a fragment. It ain't even the complete Iliad and Odyssey. So if it's a 1,300 year gap between Homer and the oldest reference of the Iliad and Odyssey, and that one is a fragment, and then you end up with a complete book. Where did that complete book come from? They made it up. They made it up. Walter Williams was right and exact when he said that the ancient Egyptians was the only ones in the ancient world that was literate. Okay? They don't have no ancient texts. You see? Now, when you go to Egypt and it says the papyrus of Ani, that's the papyrus of Ani. That's not no damn revision. It's not a remix. It's not a edit. It ain't. It's the original scroll that was down in his tomb. When you go to the walls of Menehet Habu, which is one of the temples of, I believe, Ramesses III. Menehet Habu got carvings all over the wall. That's not a re-edition or an edit or a revision or none of that. A 1,000 years. That's the original writing that was carved in the temple at that time. The Greeks don't have any. Listen to me when I tell you this. The Greeks, and I looked it up, and it verified it. And all you had to do is go to AI. AI tell you right and exact. It ain't gonna because the information, if it was there, they would give it to you. You know, they don't have no reason not to give you the information. So I looked it up. The Greeks have no original scripts. They have no original manuscripts. Everything is hundreds, if not thousands of years later from every author. There's not one author that came out of Greece where there was an original text. And not only was there no original text, most of the time it's 1,000-year gap in between the writer and the oldest edition of that book. That's right. So that eliminates the Greeks from being literate. Okay? They were not literate in the ancient world. Okay? Producing, and not only producing, but mass producing books. So not only was the Egyptians literate, they had mass literacy, meaning that the majority of the people of ancient Egypt could read and write. And that was the first. I mean, you can't even get the European continent. The majority of the European continent did not know how to read and write until the last 50 goddamn years, 50, 60 goddamn years. Even if they have truly achieved that. You see? Now, let's deal with the Bible. Now that's crazy. Wait a minute. Do y'all know the oldest? Now, if you look it up now, the oldest complete. Now, listen to me. There is fragments. Now, there's fragments, or there's books that's almost complete, but not complete. You see, but not complete. The oldest complete Hebrew Bible. Do you know what the date is? 1008 to 1009 CE. The Leningrad Codex. The scribe was Samuel ben Jacob. It was written in Cairo. Today it's in the National Library of Russia. That's the oldest complete Hebrew Bible. Now, when you take it into consideration that Moses supposedly lived 1200 BC, and the oldest complete Hebrew Bible is 1008, 1009, you are literally talking about damn near over 2,000 years. Now, to their argument, even though that's the oldest complete Hebrew Bible, they do have fragments or not complete manuscripts. Now, the oldest is the Dead Sea Scrolls, which which is hundreds of biblical manuscripts and fragments, but no complete Bible survives. So the Dead Sea Scrolls wasn't complete. You know, it was not a complete. And that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? Because even with the Dead Sea Scrolls and Moses supposedly living around 1200 BC, you still talking about 1,000 years. So the question you got to ask yourself, if it's 1,000 years, which it is, between Moses and the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Dead Sea Scrolls is fragments, how the fuck did they get a complete book? You got to ask yourself that. They made it up. Simple as that. There's no other way to address that. You see what I'm saying? There's no other way to address that. No other way. You know? Because how in the hell you going to have a complete Bible in one thing? Where did you get the blueprint from? Where did you get the blueprint from? Where did you get the blueprint from? You made it up. Exactly. So even with the Hebrew, Moses was supposed to be the earliest author of the Bible. Now we know this is fictional. We know it's fictional. We know that's fictional. If Moses in 1200 BC, he's supposed to be the earliest author. We know that's not true. Okay? There's no original manuscript, and you cannot How the hell are you going to preserve accuracy in a text unless you handing it down generation from generation from the original text? I know it hurt. I know it hurt. I know it hurt. So I know, take your pain now, go somewhere, go somewhere, find your razor blade if you can't take it and it's too much for you. Go find your razor blade, run your hot bath, handle your business. You feel what I'm saying? We dealing with the fact. The Romans, let's deal with the fact. The Romans have no original text. Only in Egypt, the only civilization in the ancient world that preserved manuscripts. The only one. The only one. You cannot find even the Romans. And they come thousands of years after the Egyptians. Listen to me. The Romans come after the Egyptians. The Greeks come after the Egyptians. Yet and still, they have not preserved, and you could go right on AI and you can ask the question and they'll tell you. Okay, that's all you had to do. That's it. And I already knew it, but I wanted to see what AI would say, what AI would do. And AI gave it up, said that the Romans never preserved any original manuscripts, that those manuscripts that are referring to came centuries later after those individuals, which mean you made it up. That's what the fuck it mean. Because if you don't have the original manuscript to source from, how the fuck do you know what they said? You don't. So you made it up. And so the Europeans are being exposed today, that they were never literate. Now the fact is, the Europeans, let's be clear about it. The Europeans just achieved mass literacy in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Do you understand that? So, see, in Egypt, because I've been and I seen it for myself. See, when you go to Egypt, they got writing all over the walls. They got papyrus. They done found hundreds of thousands, if not millions of papyruses. You see what I'm saying? The Egyptians wrote on everything, even the jewelry. They wrote on the jewelry. They wrote on the statues. They wrote all over the temples. Egypt had achieved mass literacy. You understand what I'm saying? 3000 BC. They had already achieved mass literacy. They had already achieved mass literacy. The European did not achieve mass literacy into the late 1800s, 1900s AD with the printing press. You see? And AI give it up. AI give it up. They say that the European academia has come, is unanimous in saying that Europe did not achieve mass literacy until the late 1800s, 1900s. I know it hurt. I know it hurt. You see, I know it hurt. So, as a matter of fact, it was the Moors. It was the Moors that brought the university into Europe. You understand what I'm saying? It was the Moors that brought the university system into Europe. That's right. And they acknowledged that. You see, they acknowledged that the African Moors was the one that brought the university system. And y'all was up in there absolutely doing nothing. You didn't even have the alphabet. You didn't even have an alphabet. What the fuck? Damn. These is facts. So, when we deal with the evidence is right and exact that the Africans was the only literate people in the ancient world. And we talk about Egypt, we must state that we also mean Nubia. You can't say Egypt without saying Nubia because Egypt come out of Nubia. Okay, this Egypt and Nubia were side by side every step of the way. Every step of the way. Say without Europeans, where you think y'all was in when the Moors went up and when Egypt, where you think you was? I mean, what do you think you was? What you talking about? You talking about half the world. What the fuck is you talking about? You know how many civilizations were already existed? I mean, you talking about Timbuktu was already had thousands of scrolls in Timbuktu when you didn't even have a damn library in Europe. What is you talking about? You a fool. You a fool. You a fool. Egypt come out of the south. You a fool. All the evidence prove it. Okay? All the evidence prove it that they come out of the south of Africa. You understand what I'm saying? Even the AI give it up. Nah, that's done and over with. That's done and over with. The research has already proven that they have found ancient cemeteries in Sudan, in Nubia, that precede all the burials of ancient Egypt, and the same hieroglyphs, the same crowns of Upper Egypt were already being used hundreds of years before dynastic Egypt. It's already been proven. So you can lie all you want. There is nothing else that can be said. Only in Africa, even when you think about even all the zoo types, are from Southern Africa. The hippopotamus, the crocodile. You see the leopard. What you see, the African chiefs and kings wear the leopard skin all over Africa. I know it hurt you that you can't accept the fact that we made a mistake and showed y'all how to stand up, and now today you think you can look at the gods of the planet Earth, and then you think you could step. If it wasn't for the European, what the hell you think you was in before you came into Africa? When Alexander came in, and you can listen to them Greeks. Herodotus, he was from Greece. He said when he went to Egypt, he said, God damn it, there's no other place on the planet where I have ever seen so many monuments that defy logic. You see, he said it himself. He said the Greeks are nothing but children to the Africans. So how the hell is you sitting up here? And many of the Greeks say that the Egyptians was Ethiopians. They said that. Sorry to tell you that. So you can make up any lie you want. Herodotus said the Egyptians were black with woolly hair. You know that ain't got nothing to do with you, Neanderthal. You know you's a hairy-backed man out of the cave. You talking about if it wasn't. So what the hell? You was still in the cave when the pyramids was built. When the pyramids was built, there was no European civilization nowhere on the planet. You see, even Rome come out of Etrusca, and they don't even want to talk about the Etruscans because the Etruscans was much like the Egyptians. They have proven that. Their burials were profound, unlike any other European on the continent. They buried they royalty, they kings in sarcophages, and their tombs was highly decorated with the afterlife, just like the Egyptians. They was unlike anything. That's where the Romans come out of. So excuse me, man. So I hope I know you're having a problem. Yeah, yeah. I know it's hurting. I see you. You're slobbing at the mouth, but you ain't got to worry about it. I'm glad you came in. I'm glad you came in. I could use you. I could use you as a punching bag. Thank you for coming in, y'all. Appreciate you. And I'm going to get you on out of here as I leave. I appreciate everybody coming out. Make sure y'all get over to Patreon. Get some fire. Got some 2 Raw for YouTube over there. And come right, Black family, because we not done. See you in a minute. Black Power.